October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and each year across the nation, an average of 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner. Here in Stark County, in 2021, we responded to 1,197 domestic-related calls for service, with 72 of those leading to felony domestic violence arrests. I'm proud to say we have a devoted group of agencies and individuals committed to offering safety, compassion, hope, and healing to the victims of domestic violence and their families. And we'll be talking with some of those during today's episode of On Our Watch.
I'm Major C.J. Stantz. Serving as a deputy includes a variety of duties. The job is challenging, always changing, and truly rewarding.
I am Terry Curry, Communications Supervisor. Our dispatchers are the calming voice on the other end of the line during someone's worst moment. We are always there.
I'm Lieutenant Jeff Beck. Being a corrections officer isn't easy. The job is tough and it tests you every day. Every officer that works in our jail is making a difference.
I'm Sheriff George Maier. Learn more on how you can join our team today and be the difference. Welcome to On Our Watch. I'm your Stark County Sheriff, George Maier. Here in Stark County, like communities across the nation, domestic-related incidents are common calls for service. Joining me today to talk more about our local response is the Chief Executive Officer of the Domestic Violence Project Incorporated, Julie Donant, and Stark County Sheriff's Deputy, Shane Simek. Welcome, and thank you guys for being here with us today.
Thank you, Sheriff.
You know, we talk about domestic violence, and people hear that in the community quite frequently, but really there's a lot of definitions that relate to domestic violence. And I want to take the opportunity today as we talk to kind of get the opportunity to let our viewers know, you know, the confines of domestic violence and what really domestic violence means. And beyond that, you know, there are victims related to domestic violence. And what happens to those victims? Do they get caught in the void of society, or, you know, are there programs out there to help them? So I'm going to start with you, Shane. I'm kind of put you on the spot this morning. Just give us an idea for our viewers. What's our statistics year to date as it relates to domestic violence calls for the Stark County Sheriff's Office?
Well, so far this year, we have responded to 773 domestic violence related calls. Some of those are acts of violence, some of those are just family arguments.
Okay. So there are different levels of domestic violence. When we're talking about domestic violence, there's actual physical domestic violence, there's mental abuse, there's other levels of domestic violence in the cycle of domestic violence.
Yes, very much so.
Well, Julie, I'm going to ask you, thank you again for being here with us today. What does your agency define as domestic violence?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me here. When we look at domestic violence, we're looking at really a cycle, and that would be the coercive power and control, and continually going around on that cycle. It's not just one mean comment that someone says or one argument, but it's the cycle of the tension building, and then the explosion, and then there's a honeymoon stage, and continuing to go around that cycle. As you go around that cycle faster, the violence usually becomes worse, but it's really about the manipulation and control over someone. Okay,
and so we can see where that could be demeaning to a domestic partner, either way, where that would be a continuing cycle. And so I guess, Shane, you know, I would ask you, when we think about domestic violence and domestic violence calls, if you will, outside of the work that we do with with Julie's group, would you say that law enforcement, that we're the first responders to that? Are we usually the ones that are called first, or how's that work?
Yes, many times it's a call for assistance from the home. Sometimes it's a third party. Maybe a victim has called a friend or family member and they're contacting us. But yes, generally we're the first interaction with the people there.
Okay, so Shane, walk me through, if you will, for our viewers, what's a typical call look like? The 911 dispatcher receives a call from a neighbor. Hey, I hear the neighbors, there's an argument. Doesn't sound good, we need the police.
Right.
Walk me through that.
That's basically how we'll normally get a call. When we arrive on scene, it's a 2-deputy call because we don't know what we're going into. We don't know the situation. When we get there, we will separate the parties involved so we can talk to them Separately, they can explain their point of view, what happened in that situation, without worrying about what the other party is thinking or watching what they're saying. So they can try and talk openly with us. From that point, we have to determine who the aggressor is in that situation. And then if there was an act of violence or something that meets our criteria, then we'll make an arrest at that time.
So the criteria could be a threat of violence with the ability to follow through with violence. Is that part of the criteria?
Right, yes. A lot of people are of the understanding that it has to be actual violence for us to take action. But if someone threatens a family member and they feel that that threat is about to happen, that they're about to be in harm's way, then we can take action on that, and that can be considered domestic violence.
So the law enforcement role is to stabilize the situation. If there's a domestic violence call,
Yes.
separate the parties, as you said, and then as we separate the parties, identify if there's an aggressor or if there was an act of domestic violence or a physical act of domestic violence?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And then kind of walk me through what happens with that. Let's say there is a threat of domestic violence, or somebody was actually assaulted, or a serious threat made to them. What happens next?
At that point, once we've determined who's responsible, who's going to jail, that person will be taken into custody. We'll speak with the victim. If the victim or if there's any witnesses present, which is sometimes the case, we try to get statements from them so that we can more clearly define what happened there. We weren't there on scene. We need everyone's input so we can paint that picture and put that together.
Sure.
At that point, our office offers resources and explains to victims what's going to happen next as far as court, as far as advocates they can be in contact with, and that sort of thing.
Well, Julie, I know that you work very closely with your agency as well as your colleagues with law enforcement, people like Deputy Simek, who are specifically trained to handle these types of cases. Tell me what that looks like from an agency perspective. How does that, what's the value of that to you?
So after the call happens and after Shane's team, there's a referral that is made, usually to us, that the officers that are on duty that make the call, they can ask the victim, if they're a survivor, if they'd like an advocate to contact them, and then that's where our organization would step in. So we get that referral, and then it just depends on the advocate's level of need. We have a legal team, legal advocates that can help walk them through the court system. If they just need maybe help with a safe shelter or something similar to that, we have another team that does that. They need emergency housing. Maybe it's not safe to go back to the home. We do have emergency shelters both in Canton and Massillon, and we can help them navigate coming into shelter. So there's a variety of different ways, but it's really up to the survivor and what they feel they need from us.
Sure, and that's great that you have those services available for people who are victims of this type of crime. Shane, I know that, and I've read the stats, obviously in my position I've seen the statistics, but I know that these are some of the most volatile calls that law enforcement can respond to. I'd like to get your perspective, if you don't mind, for our viewers of how do you prepare for that? How do deputies, how do police officers prepare to respond to these calls? Is there special training? And what tools do they have that when they're responding to these calls to keep themselves and the people they're responding to safe?
There's definitely a lot of training involved. We all have our basic police academy training, and that's a good start, but we get continuing education in domestic violence because it is such a common call to service. That's a topic that we are always being updated on, as far as trends, changes in the law, and interacting with victims. A lot of victims are not eager to report their situation. Even if we're there for that purpose, they may not feel open talking to us about it. They might be concerned that we're going to take that person to jail, and they don't want to see that happen, even though they were just the victim of a situation. That's someone they have emotional ties to. That's someone that they may have financial ties to. Could be the breadwinner of the family. So they're not trying to send that person to jail. They just want to make themselves safe. But the way the law is set up is that's our responsibility. That burden's on us, that we are obligated to make an arrest if that is the case.
We know that domestic violence is a volatile crime. And we know there are a number of challenges related to the domestic violence case, the victims of domestic violence, and how we handle those cases from the beginning through the end. That being said, talk a little bit about the cycle. What do you see? I mean, if somebody's a victim of domestic violence, they call the police, right away, or how does it? What's the cycle? What do you guys see as the cycle?
Well, right off, I will say we go to a lot of domestic disputes, which is just a standard family argument that we get called in maybe to help de-escalate that situation so it does not turn violent. But there are times where there could have been violence, but if nobody shares that with us, we're not aware of that. We can't take action. And generally, a victim will report or will not report actual violence until 5 or 7 times after it's happened, just for embarrassment, guilt, like I said, that financial stability. There's a number of reasons that vary, but I think some of it is shock too, that they can't believe that this is happening to them, that they are going through this.
Sure.
So,
and some people get in the, when they're in this cycle, they feel like they can manage this. They feel like we can work it out. You talked about the honeymoon stage. The day after, it's going to be better. We talked it through, and then the cycle continues.
Right.
And we see that frequently in some of our cases that we respond to. That being said, I know, Julie, that the Domestic Violence Incorporated, Project Incorporated, has a number of resources that you are able to share with the community. Can we kind of go down through that list of things that you guys have available?
Yeah, and I think to your point, what we were just talking about, I think oftentimes when the police are called and get involved, by that point it's physical or on the breach of being physical, where there's a lot of other precursor or other types of violence, domestic violence, that kind of build up to that point. So you have your emotional abuse, your sexual abuse, verbal abuse, financial abuse. And so those things, as much as they are of abuse, people sometimes don't think, well, he or she just runs the checkbook and doesn't allow me to have money, but that's okay. And I think oftentimes it making those not excuses, but just rationalizing or the reality of it maybe like that it's not so bad, or he just calls me names in front of people, or she just calls me names in front of people, but that's okay because that's just how that person is. And that's not kind, that's not loving, that's not caring. And we talk about healthy relationships and really building that healthy relationship and really what that looks like. And sometimes that's really hard, and especially with all the violence in this world, it's maybe almost more of the norm than not. And so really, to some people, it does feel normal. And so we at Domestic Violence Project Incorporated, first off, have a 24-hour hotline that people can call, and that number is 330-453-SAFE. And so I really think that's an important piece. Anyone can call that number and call and ask for resources and relationship, or if you're a parent or a guardian or anything like that, a friend, a coworker, people can call that number and ask for help and resources.
Great, that's great information, Julie. Thank you for sharing that. I want to take a moment to pause and speak about people in our community. Oftentimes I talk to folks in our community that say they like to help, they like to serve. Listen, we at the Stark County Sheriff's Office are looking for help. And so we're looking for communications folks, we're looking for deputies, we're looking for corrections officers. So please take a moment to watch our video.
I am a correction officer.
I'm a corrections corporal.
I am the jail commander.
Hi, I'm Lieutenant Jeff Beck. Being a corrections officer isn't easy. The job is tough and it tests you every day. Every officer that works in our jail is making a difference. They are providing an immeasurable service to the community by ensuring the firm, fair, and consistent treatment of our inmates as they navigate the judicial system.
Learn more on how you can join our team today and be the difference. Hey, just want to remind everybody, Shane, that October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And Shane, that kind of takes me to my next question for you is, when responding to a domestic violence call as an officer, does your mindset change? Does anything change when you've been to that house before for a domestic related event?
Like everything else, it depends on the situation. There are homes that we have been to many times, but we're never sure the situation can change. It can be a house we're going to for the first time, and we don't know who's in what role, and that may shift while we're there, just depending on what we learn and how everyone presents themselves. A house that we've been to several times before, the same thing. We may have knowledge that last time this happened, but that might not be the case this time. So we're aware of everyone's past and everyone's history when that happens, but that doesn't make up our minds. We still have to take everything into account that happened that day and balance things based off of that.
Sure. And you know, I think that kind of goes on, leads right into the next area of concern or topic is, you know, one of the things that we do is we do go to a number of homes, as we mentioned, almost 1,200 last year.
Right.
And so our deputies can tend to get emotionally involved. These are trying cases. These are families that are in crisis. How do our deputies cope with that? And what kind of things do we do as an agency to offer assistance or relief to family members in a domestic or family trouble call?
The first thing we do often is to connect those people with Domestic Violence Project. Their hotline that Julie mentioned earlier is 24/7, and no matter what level of support or assistance you need, even if it's just someone to talk to, if someone is in a situation and they feel that their family doesn't understand or they're not comfortable talking to anyone else about that, that hotline is not only there for them, it's 100% confidential. It's not getting shared with anyone. If I call in the next day and say, hey, did this person call in? They're not going to tell me. I'm going to have no idea. But we provide that to these people so that they have that resource available to them so they know that they are not alone.
That's an excellent topic to kind of highlight. So if somebody calls the hotline, Julie, if somebody calls 330-453-SAFE, they're not calling the police, right? That's important to understand for our viewers. They're not actually calling the police. They're calling the Domestic Violence Project Incorporated to offer or to ask for some type of assistance. So talk to me about how that process works.
Yeah, so when we, anyone calls in, we first start and just see what the level of service they need. Is it someone that just wants some questions answered, some resources, or are they seeking emergency assistance or help with safe shelter? And if they're seeking shelter, emergency shelter, then we have a series of questions that we go through. And then from there, we talk about their options. Sometimes callers, it's not safe after a couple minutes of calling, and they can call back and finish answering questions.
Sure.
Everything, like Deputy said, is 100% confidential. We don't look at police reports. We really take everyone for their word when coming in, and just to work with the survivor and helping them really what their needs are,
Sure.
and just making sure that they're safe in every aspect of that we can.
So going back just a little bit, I want to kind of recap. You know, we talked about the shelter and the housing. What are some of the other services if someone calls in that you can help them with?
Yeah, so again, the emergency shelter, both Canton and Maslin. We also have a victim services program that really provides anything outside the scope of safe housing. So it could be some help with, there's lots of stories of my windshield got broken by my abuser, or my tires got slashed, and so maybe we can help provide them with resources to those types of things. I need some food, I need clothing. And so we can help with those types of services. We also have legal advocates that work in both the Canton and Massillon court systems. And really it's providing that level of going into the court system and being there with the survivor, allowing them the next steps, helping them get connected with community legal aid or private attorneys, and providing that support and really oftentimes family members or friends can't be there in those settings.
Sure.
And we're there to help, and we really believe and truly understand.
That's awesome. I will tell you, just kind of reviewing some of the services that you guys are able to offer victims of domestic violence, it's certainly amazing. You know, one of the things that most people don't have to deal with an attorney. Some of these situations, your clients need help from an attorney. And so I know that that's part of one of the services that you guys can offer them. How does that work? I mean, you know, if somebody says tomorrow, hey, you need an attorney, most people really wouldn't know how to go about putting that together.
Right. We have a fabulous network of attorneys within our agency, and we really work community legal aid, but then amongst private attorneys as well. We also work with the prosecutor's office, and just to continue to really see what the survivor needs and wants, and then just help them make those connections.
Sure, and that's great. That you're able to do that. Shane, like with many things, our responsibility to domestic violence incidents is ever evolving. We continue to look at how we do business each and every day, and you know, I like us as an agency to be forward-leaning and use the most latest and greatest concepts to serve our public. Can you talk about how we continue to improve in our responses? What kind of things can we do or do we do to help us improve in our responses?
I think education and resources that we make available to victims is a big thing. In the past, 100 years ago, nobody talked about domestic violence. And now it's a common term, but people still don't understand all the aspects of it, how it affects them, how it affects their family members. So there's resources, the domestic violence shelter, safety planning is something we talk to people about. Maybe it's not a domestic violence situation, but it's a situation that continues to escalate and they're concerned that it's gonna get bad. And they want to leave, they want to safely break ties, and they don't know how to do that. So safety planning is something we'll talk about, how they can start figuring out how to do that, how to make an exit, at what point they can leave, resources that are available that they can use to help them plan and help them do that.
That's great. Well, I will tell you, I'm sure the same is true for Domestic Violence Project, Inc. You guys are always looking for ways that you can improve your services to the victims that you serve. And I know you keep using the term survivors. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, really it comes down to, we try to turn that phrase into something that would be maybe negative or someone would look at as being a victim and turning into a survivor, and really empowering that person that may have been in a tough situation or under that power and control, but they do have control over their life now, and sure, empowering them to feel and to know that they can move forward. I
love that your motto, your Domestic Violence Project Incorporated motto, or not motto, but mindset is that you can survive. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that why we're doing this program. We want folks out there who are a victim of domestic violence, or if you feel like you're a victim of domestic violence, to reach out, because you can survive. Most people in a domestic violence situation do not think of themselves as a victim. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and so when we talk about people being victims of crime, it doesn't really always settle in with people that because I was involved in a domestic violence, I'm a victim. Mm-hmm. And so I love the fact that you guys use the mantra that you're a survivor, and we appreciate that, and we try to do that within our agency as well. We have avenues for people to survive. Mm-hmm. Shane, I know we have a number of folks within our agency that work with you on domestic violence. and pointing victims, survivors towards assistance. Talk a little bit about that, about our network, if you can kind of sum that up.
As far as our office itself, we have 2 deputies assigned specifically to work with domestic violence cases, to either follow up with victims, get charges on warrants when necessary, assist victims, or just make sure that they're doing okay, that everything's going all right. From there, we work with advocates both at the Domestic Violence Project and within the courts. Community Legal Aid is a big partner and somebody we work with a lot, and all of these organizations are part of the Stark County Domestic Violence Collaborative that our office has been a part of, I believe, from the beginning.
Great. I hope our viewers learned today from the time that you guys were willing to spend with us that this is a complex topic. It really is. We have folks out here that don't even know they're part of in that cycle. And so with some of the information that you were able to share today, I certainly hope will help folks understand that they may be in that cycle of domestic violence and reach out for help. Look, folks, I will tell you, I'm advocating that October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. For our viewers, please research this topic. We have just barely scratched the surface today.
Absolutely.
But I thank you so much for your ability to talk to our viewers about this ongoing and complex issue that we have in our community. And we thank you for everything that you do as it relates to helping survivors reach their goal of survival. And so I will say in closing to our guest, and which is our CEO of the Domestic Violence Project Incorporated, Julie Donant, and Stark County Sheriff's Deputy Shane Simek. Thank you both so very, very much. Honestly, this is a topic that we need to talk about more. And all this information that you received today, certainly these folks are open to talk to any individual about that, so please give us a call. If you are a victim of domestic violence, or you know someone that is a victim of domestic violence, please, please, please call 911 or your local police agency if you need help. Please feel free to call the Domestic Violence Hotline, 330-453-SAFE. That's 330-453-SAFE. And I will tell you that I really appreciate our conversation today with our guests. And with that, I'm your Stark County Sheriff, George Maier, and this is On Our Watch. We're working together to keep you safe.